senses, not a chance of romance. I was full of self-defenses. Now I feel that I really should face the consequences. My philosophic search has left me in the lurch. I must find one my mind is behaving like a dancer. What's the clue to pursue? Do I have to have that answer? I could cry salty tears. Where have I been all these years? Listen, you tell me, do how long has this been going on? There were chills up my spine and some thrills I can't define. Listen, sweet, I repeat, how long has this been going? Oh, I feel that I could melt into heaven on worlds. I know how Columbus felt finding another world. Kiss me once and then once more. What a dunce I was before. What a break. What a break, for heaven's sake. How long has this been going?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is our first pandemic Memorial Day weekend. So all of you, I guess, would have been on the beach. I would have been having a barbecue in our backyard. We would have been celebrating. But we've got a celebration lined up for you this afternoon. I'm very, very excited. First of all, I want to mention my sponsors, Casting New Lives, my management team, and Nitelife Exchange, Scott Barberino. Thanks for all you do to get the word out. We have a lot of people here right now. I see Judy Mark, Katie Nieheisel. My mom is here watching from South Carolina. They're not paying attention down there. Brian Summers, Sarah Rice, Yvonne Marie McQuaid, Phyllis Kinsler, Brian Summers, Ann Kittredge has made it here, Barbara Ann Davidson, my sister, Brent Sawyer, Marta Sanders, Claudia Stack, Susan Neufer, Helene Bloomfield, Marcia, well, you're going by fast, Marcia Sander, Patty Bottino, John DeRoe. Thank you all for being here today. I want to talk about cabaret. And I know if any of you have questions or comments or suggestions, put them in the comment section and we'll try to get to them as fast as we can. When it comes to cabaret, what does cabaret mean to you? In New York, cabaret can be comedy. It could be impersonation. It could be drag. It could be singers. But today, we are going to be celebrating the cabaret singer. And we do this with our dear friends, David Sabella and Sue Matsuki, who are joining me right now. And they have a new book that's coming out. I understand that the book was supposed to come out in May, but a little thing called COVID-19 got in the way. So welcome, both of you. I love you dearly. Sue, it's
love you back.
We were doing this. I know.
Thank you so much, Richard.
So I want to begin, ladies first. Let's go there. Sue.
So, okay, I'll start.
Okay. There you go. So You can flip a coin over that. But I'm going to ask both of you before we discuss the book, how you each got into the world of cabaret. And then we'll go and talk a little bit more about the specifics of how the book came about and what the book is all about.
All right. Well, I came into cabaret. I was singing down at the Village Gate at the open mic there with the likes of Jennifer Pace. Her dad, Gary, was our pianist. Stan Edwards was our MC. It was kind of a upscale auditioned open mic. And Trudy Mann, I met Trudy Mann there many, many years ago. So this was kind of the core group of all of us who sang there, including, Craig Calderone.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a great group of people. Yeah. And from there, Trudy started saying, well, they have these clubs called cabarets and blah, blah, blah. And I ended up going up and auditioning for Sidney. And I was so nervous. And the first audition, we did it live back in the day. And I remember being on stage and I was so scared. And Sidney said, darling, just take a deep breath. It's only me. And I sang again and he booked me. And that was the start 33 years ago. As you know, I did my recent show, How's That for Openers, on my 33rd anniversary of my 33rd year of singing at Don't Tell Mamas from that first show that Sidney booked me at. And I haven't left.
Well, and thank God for that. And David?
Well, my introduction to cabaret, a cabaret room, was 88's. Way back in the day. And I remember in college even, and just after, I would close down the bar with Helen Baldessari and Terry White behind the bar.
Oh, God.
And I sang a little bit of good 10 years before I sang it on Broadway, just around the piano bar at 88's. Then after Chicago, cabaret was for me, like for many other people, a way to redefine yourself, because I became so defined as that character in Chicago. My first show back was, my first show, I guess, really, was No More Mrs. Nice Guy, which I did at the then Judy's Chelsea. And that segued me from being Mary Sunshine into being myself. And I did several other shows around that time. So late 90s, early 2000s, I think I left performing, so to speak, a little bit after 2006 to raise my kids. And then I came back around 2015 to reinvent myself once again.
Now, I came to New York in 1979. And in the early 80s, I went from showcase to showcase to showcase in New York. And then I began to burn out. And I went to see, believe it or not, a career coach. And she said, why don't you write your own show? Create your own show. And I started writing a show. Lena Katrakis, who we all know, was my very first director. I reached out to Lena and I said, Lena, I want to do a cabaret show, but I don't know the first thing about what I want to do. And she says, that's the best place to start.
Yeah.
And I literally at that time, and we're going back to the mid 80s. Well, actually, when I got involved in cabaret, it was in the early 90s. I went around to see as many shows as I could possibly see before I did my own show. I looked to see who the directors were at that time. Lena Katrakis was the director du jour. She is again, I guess.
She still is.
She still is. And, and I started working with her. Now, I said that my mom and my sister are both watching from South Carolina. Neither one of them, to the best of my knowledge, have ever stepped foot on a cabaret stage. Now, if they were to step foot on a cabaret stage in Myrtle Beach, chances are that they would be wearing tassels and doing an act that could get them locked up somewhere. Because that's what people think cabaret is.
It is, yes.
Outside of New York. For those people who are in other parts of the country who don't know about New York cabaret or even what cabaret is, how does your book address that issue?
Go ahead, David.
Thanks. It was actually one of the daunting things that we addressed in the book because there are so many preconceived notions about what cabaret is. And we had to really address what cabaret is not. And so cabaret is not just the movie. Cabaret is not a
gentleman's club.
A gentleman's club with, it isn't that. We were also kind of bound to define cabaret in terms of the singer. So we couldn't even really get into all that cabaret is because we had to focus on, because it's So You Want to Sing Cabaret, sponsored by the National Association of Teachers of Singing. So it's a little essay into the singers, the great singers and singing that goes on in the cabaret genre. But right at the top of the book, I make a point to establish different types of singers who may find themselves in a cabaret room, and whether or not they know what to do there, because cabaret is first and foremost a very intimate communication that is directly personal from me to you. It is not music theater. It is certainly not a classical recital. It is not any other type of presentation that we're familiar with. Cabaret is very different in that regard.
I also think that
go ahead. I'm sorry, Sue. Go ahead.
I also think that it's kind of a mini theatrical experience with what it's become with us writing scripts and there being a beginning, a middle, and an end. So to me, it's an alternative to theater. It's a 1 hour versus a 2 hour alternative to theater, depending on who you're singing and what the particular act is. But as David was saying, we also define it in the book as a huge umbrella of pretty much anything goes. But the underlying thing, I think we all would agree, is that there's this intimacy and this aspect of lyric connection and having true understanding of the lyrics that you're singing as yourself versus a character. So I think that that's a little bit of also how we define what this genre is separate from other music.
And also, and very, we in the cabaret industry and community, we know this. So I kept thinking, okay, this is boring for everyone else. But, the publisher was astonished to learn that nobody sings the same song in the same way, that everyone has a personalized arrangement. Like that idea does not cross the minds of general public who are used to seeing music theater. Right.
And many vocal teachers who are teaching across the United States who also don't know what this genre is, which is why this publishing company thought that cabaret would be a nice cap on this 20-book series that they've produced.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question. This book is, I think you said, the end of the line in a long series of books. So you think you can sing rock and roll. You think you can sing country music. So you think you can sing Broadway. Now, David, you were originally tapped to write a chapter for another book. Is that right? Yes,
for their one of their books called So You Want to Sing CCM, which is contemporary commercial music. And the publisher, series editor, contacted me to write a chapter for this book. And this was at a time when my personal life was kind of raging with the divorce. And so I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it, to be honest. I was like, okay, I'd love to do this. Thanks for asking. And I let it go and let it go and let it go. And finally, I penned off this chapter in about 3 or 4 hours, and then sent it off. And the book came out a year later. And I realized I really should have paid attention to what it was because what it turns out to be—
Step up to the plate, you may learn something.
Yeah. What it turned out to be was sort of an expose on 12 international teachers who have put forth a methodology for teaching contemporary commercial music. And they asked me to be one of the 12. And it was a great honor. And I read through the book and read all the other names of teachers that I had looked up to for so many years, internationally. So it was really a great honor to be included in that book. And that was the end of it. And I thought, great, what a blessing. I have a chapter in a book. And the week that book came out, which was April of, I think, 2018, the week after that, the publisher contacted me again, the series editor, and said, so we've decided that our final book is So You Want to Sing Cabaret. And we know you've done this, and we love the way you write. So would you consider authoring the whole book? And my immediate response was no, because I thought I am not an expert in that. So I thought long and hard. If you've seen my own shows, I do a number called Yes. I don't like to say no. So I thought long and hard about it. And I said to them, look, I'm no expert in this. I'm not going to even try to pan myself off as an expert. I was reemerging into this after raising my kids. I said, but I can get you a book of interviews and exposés and techniques and from the horse's mouth. I'll do that because I do know a lot of people in the world of cabaret.
Calling me a horse? No, I'm just kidding.
So they said, yes, that's perfect. That's what we want. And so that's how this book came about. Then you yourself, Richard, introduced me to my sister, Sue Matsuki.
Yes.
And the book
My
took
sister
on a
too.
whole new life. Yeah, took on a whole new life after that. So I'm very grateful to you.
Well, two things that you just said that really jump out at me. Number one, that you admitted yourself that you were not an expert in this field, but you wanted to reach out to others that you felt were.
Yeah.
And you also felt, that by getting Sue involved, I know Sue's from the wonderful interview that I heard the other night with Deborah Stone and some pieces that I gleaned from that interview. I know, Sue, you mentioned the fact that you, for many, many years, were the personal assistant to a well-known person in the financial world, completely different from Cabaret.
Right.
But one of the things that I, as well as other people, love about you are your organizational skills and the fact that you have really brought the two together, not only from that world, but into the world of what you do now. So what makes a great collaboration between two writers? First of all, let's go there.
Well, if I may start, David. So David, you introduced us. You say Sue's been in the business. Maybe you want to just give her a talk. I go, we have dinner, we talk. I bring him some materials from classes I had been teaching. He's like, oh, this is great. This is great. Hey, why don't you contribute a couple of chapters? So long story short, I contributed a couple of chapters. Then we started to collaborate on those chapters, and David started to expand and expound on them. And they just became more and more of what they ended up being in the book, the final chapters. So we both agreed that rather than take credit on who wrote what, that we were writing this together. And I have to say, with the exception of personal hissy fits, that we were both going through stuff and kind of venting to each other about stuff, we
Which
really
happens on every show to begin with.
Yeah.
we had no issue at all about anything in relation to the flow of the book. And I do think we have two different skill sets. And mine is cheerleader and organization. And I would do these weekly things to us and to the publishers. This and this and this is what we have to do for this week to try to keep us focused. And at times when David was going through some stuff, I would just write him personally and say, we have this, we're going to get this done. It's going to happen. And so, yeah, I think that, even in the book, my chapters about business and my chapters about organization and how to put a show together, these are all things that come out of my being type A, a retentive kind of organized kind of type person. So I do bring in some of my business skills to the aspects of the book that are business oriented. But I'm going to pass the rest of this off to David.
Well, it's interesting. This book is one of only, I think, two or maybe three, but maybe one of only two books in the series that are co-written by a male and a female co-author, which really has great perspective. And Sue writes, as you know, because you've read her writing, very lovingly and caringly and takes care of the reader. And I'm a little bit more authoritarian, like, it's a textbook. So
third person.
Yeah. So, what I did with Sue's chapter, she brought the data. She brought a lot of the wonderful data in the business chapter, in the putting a show together chapter. That really is her data. I just sort of reorganized it for the community that I know would be reading it, which is the voice teaching community, and to put it into that third person textbook type of format, and then we worked collaboratively on the interview chapters, going back and forth. And I have to also give a tremendous shout out to Roy Sander, who co-edited. I'll give him that unofficial credit. He read through almost the entire book and gave me lots of
Did you get any
pointers.
either of you get any outside interference from the book publisher themselves, or did they give you free reign to do what you need to do with the book?
Free reign.
Encouraging. Yeah.
That's unheard of.
We sent them something that we thought was too much. They were like, this is all great. We have to pare it back because we're already way over, and then they also let us go and make the book bigger than they intended because they didn't want to cut any more content. So they were awesome. I can't even tell you how good they were.
I want to give a shout out to two other books in the cabaret genre. The first is James Gavin's incredible book, Intimate Nights.
Absolutely.
Which I recommend to everybody if you haven't read it. which really gives a real history of New York City nightlife.
We actually do reference that book
great.
in our history chapters. I'm like, for more information on this, please see James Gavin.
And the other book, of course, is the Cabaret Singer's Handbook, which was my Bible for many, many years. I still refer to it. One of my favorite lines, I think, is on page 16 of the book. I still remember that. And it says, it's the chapter that cabaret going is part of the process, going out and seeing what other people are doing. Now, I know that both of you wanted to give an homage, if for lack of a better word, to the history of cabaret,
right,
and how that has evolved. Since both of you got started, I think you said, Sue, 33 years.
Right.
And David, a little shorter for you. What are the biggest changes that the two of you have seen in the world of cabaret, and for the better and for the worse?
Well, I also think that the main difference between where the first book, the Handbook of Cabaret, versus where we are now is because of these differences. Like the clubs used to be literally 20 to 40. Then they became 40 to 60. Now cabarets are green room and 54 below, which are 120 to 180. So the new way of performing intimately in these bigger rooms is part of the training. You know, it's part of being able to reach everybody now in this bigger arena of people. More, we used to call it nightclub singing, quite frankly. You know? So there is kind of a little bit of a difference. What Marilyn May does to me is more nightclub singing. You know, I think the best part of where cabaret has transitioned is that it's a bigger umbrella. Now, there used to be a lot of funkier inside joke New York stuff things happening, you know, the whole Wizard of Oz medley down at 88's and the piano bar. Every piano bar had their shtick, you know. John McMahon.
You could tell the time by the shtick.
Right. And John McMahon used to do his jazzing up Broadway songs thing. And, you know, so everybody had their thing at a different club. And while that still remains, it's gotten broader and bigger and crazier and, you know, I mean, anything under this umbrella, opera, jazz, contemporary music, pop, R&B, everything is under this new cabaret umbrella, not just the American Songbook. So I applaud everyone for going outside of the box and bringing in all our fantastic original writers too. Oh my goodness. Where would any of us be without these amazing original writers, especially here in New York? I don't, except for the business part of cabaret where it turned from, when I started singing, I got paid. I got dinner. You know, if I brought people into a club and the club noticed it, they would give us a bump up. They'd give us a percentage of the bar intake if they knew that 20 of the 40 people in there were directly there for me. That's not happening anymore. And of course, this, you know, nickel and diming, and this is a whole other conversation that's not about the book, but it's where we're going to go in, you know, in the future with all this. But that's another whole conversation and interview. But so that part I'm not crazy about, the pay to play thing that we created. That we, the singers, are so desperate to work in a club that we, oh yes, I'll pay so and so, and oh yes, I'll rent the room. And that changed after 88 started bringing in high level talent, because 88 was one of the clubs. Remember that if someone came into town, I'd say go to 88's because you were guaranteed to see a high level show there.
That's right.
Versus a mom and pop, with nothing wrong with that. We all have to learn, but you know, you could always guarantee, like at 54 below, that the shows there are going to be of a very, very high level. Once that started to happen and there was competition in the clubs, now it became advantageous for the clubs to say, well, hey, you know, there's a tech fee and hey, we're going to charge this amount. We're going to take this amount back and stuff like that. And so that's the hard part. I feel like we're the last ones to get paid. Our musicians get paid and they should. You know, our technicians get paid and they should, but the singer's the only one that walks away. Really,
everyone's self-producing now.
Right.
Well, you mentioned the different styles of singing in cabaret. With either one of you, what defines a cabaret singer?
David, you take that. You're the vocal coach.
Well, I'm before I answer that, Richard, I think a lot of noise out my window. Is it a problem for the mic?
I don't hear any of it.
Okay, great. You know, we do address this in the book, of course. What defines a cabaret singer is their connection to the lyric. First and foremost, their intimate connection to the lyric, not any kind of specific vocal sound they might make, because there is no one right vocal sound to make in cabaret. This is not opera. We're not in opera. If you're not making that sound, you're not singing opera. Here we can sing opera, which I've done on a cabaret stage, and we could sing jazz and music theater and standards, American Songbook. So there's no definition of the sound. I would say, let's say 85% of it is a more spoken delivery. Should be the cabaret singer comes from a spoken point of view. Even the sopranos in cabaret, there's a mixy spoken sound to that. They're not lofting up into their, operatic or classical head voice for the most part, unless the song they're doing requires that. Then they do that, but first and foremost, I would say it's definitely the connection to the lyric and the experience that they bring. Yeah.
We mentioned too that, a lot of times, now, I don't want to say it's not about the voice, because all the singers I know have great voices, but it's not as much about the voice. Like, I would rather go to see a show with someone with a little bit lesser vocal ability that is moving me to tears, that is making me go with them, that is making me process their songs through my own energy, and versus someone with a pristinely beautiful voice that's this, So I think that's another really great aspect of cabaret, is that you don't have to be a pristinely perfect singer. You can just be who you are and just bring that to the table.
Well, the cabaret performer's technique is to make it seem like there's no technique. Right. The technique is to make it seem like it's effortless and natural. I don't want to see you working at singing. Right. And there is a technique for that. I don't want to see all the work that goes behind the singing. I just want you to sing. Right. And that's a real specific technique.
I mean, one of the best for me videos that's out there, and I advise anyone to see this, is Barbra Streisand at the Village Vanguard, where, she's got, we know who Barbra Streisand, but the intimacy of what she does in that room is, I can only imagine what it was like in those early days when people were hearing that voice for the first time. With each of you, what has it made you be able to sustain a career, Sue, for example, for 33 years in this business? What do you think has kept you, still very relevant today?
I think this is a quote that I put in the book. When asked, why do I sing, with all the frustration and competition, and as Sarah Rice, our good friend Sarah Rice, always says, we're always fighting over the same chicken bone.
Yes.
Gigs and whatever. With all of that, when asked, why do I still sing, the answer is always some form of, because I have to. I am less of a person. I am less of an artist. I am less of Sue Matsuki if I don't have this creative outlet to sing. And Julie Wilson, having been one of my great mentors, basically set the bar for me on how I should act off the stage as well as on the stage, in terms of, people kiddingly refer to me as the godmother of cabaret. But I take that on very seriously, because I think that all of us that have been doing this for a while need to pass it down. And I'm not just talking to young people. I'm talking about to anyone who's new on the scene. Just pass down the knowledge, which is what David and I think are really trying to do with this book. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a generational component. The way theater used to be taught is the way cabaret is still taught. Theater was a generational experience. You came to the city, you latched on to someone who could tell you the stories and teach you the techniques, and that's how you learned about theater and music theater. And cabaret has that very person-to-person exchange and legacy tradition that gets carried on. There's no other book. There's no textbook, let's say. Like, this is really a textbook.
I'm reading the comments here. Deb Stone just wrote something so important, which we didn't actually physically say. It didn't come out of our mouths, but all of this is not for us. This is for the audience. I mean, when you step on a stage, you do your technique, you do your work, you read our book, you learn how to put a show together, and then you step on a stage, and now it's not about you anymore. You've done the work. Now it's all about who's in front of you. The reason to do this is for communication purposes, to feed your soul, of course, I mean, in terms of why I do it, but it's always, always, always for the audience. And thank you, Deborah, for bringing us back to that point. That's a valid and very important point.
Now, we talk about what makes a great cabaret singer. What makes a great cabaret teacher?
Well, I think they have to be Greek.
About this
Are you
time,
listening, Lena?
about the F-bomb a lot.
You know, someone who there are many in this industry. I hesitate to mention anyone because I'll leave somebody out. But you know, we all know this community of teachers who can somehow look into your eyes and pull out your soul and say, what is it you want to say? I'll say this. Bruce Hopkins, if you remember him. Bruce Hopkins.
God, yes.
Yeah. So Bruce and I worked together for many years in La Grande Chena, and Bruce was a cabaret director at that time. And I never will forget the first thing Bruce said to me. He's, because I wanted to do a cabaret show. He's like, what do you want to say? I'm like, well, I want to sing this. No, what do you want to say? Why should I pay attention to you? What are you going to say that's different that I'm going to look up from my beer, from my drink?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, okay. What do you want to say? And so someone who can have that conversation with you and authentically help you to pull it out. I kid you not, that experience for me up until very recently, up until the last 7 years, was so difficult to come to a song and think, oh, I love that. I want to do that song. And go, oh, no, I can't do that song. So-and-so just did that song just like that. So I have to do it my own way. What do I want to say with it? What makes it unique to me? Mm-hmm. And the idea of picking repertoire and the idea of creating this world of our show that is a singular moment, a moment that will never happen again, that's extremely rare and different. And so a director and a teacher that can guide you to do that can guide you to pull out that uniqueness for that singular moment and not have it be their moment and not have it be anyone else's moment, that's a great teacher.
I'd say the best directors, too, are the ones that you know they're involved in the project, but you don't see them once the performer's on stage. It's all about the performer. And in the book, we do a whole chapter on how to pick and how to find your musical director and your directors. I say 3 to 5, make a 1-hour session with them, sit down, tell them your vision, see how they work, see if it's simpatico with the way that you want to work. And in terms of the musical directors, do they have the styles of the music that you want to play with? And you find this out by going to shows, as Richard said, and seeing 3 or 4 shows. Oh my goodness, I think that guy is so great. Okay, he's on the list. I'm going to do a 1-hour session with him. I think Tracy Stark's amazing. I got to work with her. You know, I think Lena's great. I think Lenny's great. I think, Jeff Harner's great. Go and sit and meet with them. They're people, and just say, this is my idea for a show. How do you work? And it's a business deal. It's the start of a business relationship, And the only thing I would do differently in my whole career is I would work with more different teams, because I think you can glean. I love my Gregory. I've been with Gregory for 25 years.
I want to talk about that for a moment. You and Gregory Torian have been working together for 33 years.
25.
25.
Yeah, now, I've been singing for 35. We worked 25 years together.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I first started in this business, one of the greatest pieces of advice that was given to me by KT Sullivan. And she says, have at least 5 people who know your show so that you're never at a loss. Mm-hmm. And I know that I know that you know this better than anyone, Sue. Many years ago, Julie Wilson was booked at Carnegie Hall, and her musical director got ill the night of the show, and she was not able to go on because all of her music was in his head.
Well, this is why piano bars are so valuable, because the more you go to piano bars and open mics, the more you get used to your music not sounding exactly the same as it does with your MD. That's a big learning curve. And even in, Lena's class, for example, she has different MDs come in. Marilyn May has different MDs come in because everybody has a different style. But with Gregory, I mean, he's my number one guy, but I've worked with Tracy Stark. I've worked with many people. Tracy's always the person I go to, like for out of town gigs, because Gregory doesn't travel with the piano. And so she is up on my entire repertoire, and having great arrangements, again, information in the book, having great arrangements that can go with you, that are in the cloud. So I'm in California and I can download my charts for a musical director I'm working with there easily, and my PR can be downloaded. These are all business things that you can do that we lay out.
I want to focus
It's
on
also
that
it's also
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's a symptom of where we were years ago and where we are now with the technology. Now, many people have this great skill of writing out, like by computer, writing out the full arrangement and sending you a PDF. And, you know, like Sue said, you can have it up in the cloud. You know, there was a day when that didn't happen.
You had a
so
truck
much.
with a big pile of music.
You know, it was all handwritten, and to change a chart was a big ordeal because it had to all be written again. Now you want to change the key or change it's a couple of buttons to do that. So we're in a different time with that as well, and that bleeds over into Broadway. Broadway now is not key centric anymore. You need to change the key up and down for the specific performer. They do that with the touch of a button. It doesn't cost $2,000 for the orchestra to do that anymore. So now they're very much more liberal with it and more text driven as well.
Now, last night I was watching Becoming, the Michelle Obama documentary, and she mentions in this that when she went to her guidance counseling school, the guidance counselor, when she said she wanted to go to Princeton, her guidance counselor told her that she was reaching too high for that. And I know that a lot of people, let's face it, we all have been there. We know this. In the New York City cabaret community, for example, there are cliquish moments and everything. For someone who's just trying to break into cabaret, let's talk specifically about New York, someone who's trying to break into the community, what do you think are some of the steps that they should take in terms of embarking on a career in this field? And what are some of the mistakes that you think people make just starting out?
Well, I want to address one thing, and then I'll turn it over to Sue. In the book, I'm very conscious to use these two terms very differently: cabaret community and cabaret industry. And I think it's very important, especially in this time that we're all going through now with this global pandemic, that the community of performers take value and pride in the fact that they are the cabaret industry. Every performer is an investor. They are the investors in this industry. They self-produce their own shows, right? And so we must think of ourselves with that much business savvy and political maybe solidarity or unit solidarity as a cabaret industry. Within that industry, there is a community of performers. And those two things are a little different. Right, the industry includes and involves the club owners, et cetera, but the community of performers, those of us who are in this quote unquote family community, you don't break in, you're welcomed in, right? Everybody is really welcomed into the community of performers, and that's very much kind of unique and not experienced in many other performance genres as it is in cabaret. I think because everyone is expected to have that unique voice. Okay, now you answer, both of you can answer this for me. If someone came in and just started singing everybody else's arrangements, though, that wouldn't go over so well, would it?
Well, that's a point that I wanted to make because, you know, I have seen that happen.
Right.
Where I have heard an incredible arrangement of a song, and then a couple of weeks later, I'm at another show, and I hear the same exact arrangement.
Right.
Talk about that, both of you.
Yeah, that I kind of call that the girlfriend code, and it could be the boyfriend code too. But if someone I know, and a lot of times I'm in class and someone's singing a song, and I might be working on that song, or I've done that song before, I will usually choose not to do that song in my show until that person's show is down, because to me, it gets kind of like, oh, look what I can do with that song type thing. But that's me. It's me. And it doesn't mean all music is open for everybody to sing in whatever way. But as David pointed out before, every time one of us gets on stage, it should be through our own stuff. To take over or steal someone's intellectual property, someone's arrangement, or even a novelty tune that was written specifically for them without permission is kind of not cool. I don't really think that that's a very cool thing to do. So that is definitely one of the things I would say not to do. The other thing I would say to the newbie coming in is don't assume you can do this on your own. You have to create a team. I would not advise going in with a band unless you are someone who has sung with a band. I would advise piano vocals. I would advise cabaret classes with a couple of people that you think might want to direct you. Choose one of those people and then commit to them. There's got to be a level of intimate trust with that director, because a lot of times this personal stuff we're talking about in terms of our lyric connection goes very deep, and you want to be able to trust that person not to go make fun of you behind your back, which I don't know any director that I know of in this business here in New York that would do that. But I'm just saying there's got to be that level of intimate trust. And even for the Broadway people who have these big, gorgeous voices, pristinely beautiful voices that come into cabaret, they don't know what they're doing a lot of times. They don't know how to go from here to here to here. And it's a learning curve for them as well. The voice is in place, but it's almost painful sometimes when it's so big in a smaller room. And it's Vegas-y and it's not intimate. So there's, even for the people who we all look at and go, oh my God, they're on Broadway, they're so amazing. I go see them in cabaret shows and I'm like, okay, they got something to learn here. So I would advise them too to get themselves a good director, a cabaret director, not a theater director.
There's a real art to paring it down, to personalizing it, to making it authentically yourself. You know, you can see if someone is still playing a character in their mind. You know, if they've sung this song in the show that they're doing on Broadway, and they do that song, and once again, they're that character. You know, well, that's different. It's not exactly what we want on a cabaret stage. I want you to be you. I want to see what this song means to you. When Karen Mason sings As If We Never Said Goodbye, I hear Karen Mason sing that.
I have hair on my arm standing up as you say that at the
top. I know, mine too.
So, and she's a perfect example of a Broadway star, celebrity who really can do it and focus it and bring it right down to. And
yet it's perfectly okay in the context of a cabaret show to be a character. Of course it is, as long as we understand that. But the subtext in the work you do in that number should still always have an underlining sense of what those words mean to you as the singer, as the character. So there's another layer of it when you perform as a character on stage in a cabaret performance class.
This is one of the big issues right here that I think the university and voice teaching community, upon reading this book, is going to really reorganize how they come to think about this. There are universities now that are starting to offer, cabaret type classes, but they don't really have a cabaret curriculum. It's music theater in the crook of a piano, right? And so the idea of in cabaret, you really have to do something different. It has to actually sound different and be informed differently and be personalized. That's a very different thing that again, not many people are even aware that is the work.
Now, does this book resonate also? I know that other cities, St. Louis, I think, has a cabaret community. San Francisco, I know, does. Los Angeles, they don't have as many opportunities there as there are for those in New York. But for people that are around the country who are looking to break into cabaret, do you feel that there is a different sense or a vibe performing outside of New York than there is performing in New York? Or do you think that if it's good, it's going to resonate everywhere?
I would hope that the work has to remain the same. The work has to be quality work. The work is the authentic communication, of the text. And I think that resonates everywhere. I will say that right in the introduction of the book, I'm very clear that the book is performer-wise and club-wise very New York-centric. And this was simply a condition of, the limited finances to go and interview people all around the country or to really research other cities. And there are actually per capita, there are so many more cabaret clubs and cabaret performers in New York City, which is still sort of the epicenter of the genre, that on purpose we made the book very New York centric, talking to the New York club owner about the clubs and the New York performers. And centric to the last 10 or 15 years, like very present day. One of the things I hope this book is a snapshot into the present history. Like 10 and 20 years from now, you're going to read this book and realize what was going on in this industry and its community of performers quite intimately. Steve Ross talks about the beginning of his career, and he mentions Ted Hooks and all the places he's worked. And Sidney Myer talks about the opening of Don't Tell Mama, and Karen Mason talks about the opening of Don't Tell Mama from a completely different perspective. And people start, as you read the book, people's stories start to infringe upon each other's. And you go, oh, I'm getting the whole context of the last 20 years, let's say, in this industry. And that was kind of on purpose. So I'm glad it comes off that way.
But I'll never forget, I was in Alaska doing the Fairbanks Summer Arts Festival. I did it for 5 years. I went through with Helen Baldessari the first year, and then I just kept going back because they have a great program there. And I remember the gals there, and everyone up there has great voices. They're all really good singers, because in Alaska, it's dark and cold for, 6 to 8 months. What do? They watch movies, they sing, they work on their art. Yeah. An amazing group of talented people up there. But one of my friends, Barbara, said to me, I said, you guys have such great voices. You're singing at these great clubs. She goes, yeah, but you're doing it in New York. And that made me so humbled by the fact that, and it made me proud, and it made me realize, yeah, I have sung every single cabaret in New York City. Mm-hmm. I have. Now, am I making a living? Am I paying my rent? No,
but you're creating your art.
But their perception of it, but you're doing it in New York, I think is what you were asking. And I think that people in Chicago who study, with the teachers that do those classes, and then the Midwest Conference and the P-Town Conference, all those people that go to teach at those different conferences they're people who attend these conferences are all thinking, yeah, but these are people from New York, so it's pretty great. I think that that's why we kept it New York centric for now. And hopefully in 10 years, it's across the country and everybody knows what it is. And our book is obsolete because it's changed that much.
Well, speaking of changing, when the two of you sat down to write this book, the words COVID-19, physical distancing, I use that instead of social distancing, physical distancing, all these things have, put the brakes on everyone. But I am seeing, and I know that this is not part of your book, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but right now, a lot of people are, working with tracks and doing whatever they can to create their own art. And how do you feel, both of you, based on the history that you both have had, based on writing this book, that what we are going through right now, have you thought about this, or where do you think how this is going to impact cabaret moving forward?
Well, we've thought about this a great deal. Sue and I recently brought together a group of industry leaders to talk about this, to talk about the future of cabaret during social or physical distancing, and then as physical distancing guidelines are eased up a bit, and what can happen. First off, I want to acknowledge the great work that some fantastic singers, people who are even viewing us right now, including Ann Kittredge, who I know is on the line. I saw her name. I don't know who else is on the line, but, doing some great work in posting on social media, in putting out recordings of performances or putting out asynchronous performances. Marissa Mulder is doing some great work with John Weber and other pianists with asynchronous performance, I think through an app called Acapella. I'm not sure how she's doing it, but they come off lovely. The show broads and the whole changing table phenomenon.
And they did one for my stay home campaign.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes. Okay. And there are people doing really, really good work, both synchronously and asynchronously. And I want to acknowledge all of that, because we need that. That's bringing cabaret to a larger audience. And I think we have to stop thinking about it as, oh my God, how am I going to continue to do what I know how to do with all the people I know how to do it? And start thinking about, how can I use these technologies, this microphone, this platform, to bring my art to an internet audience that does not know what I do yet. I can see a day where there is a live streaming camera at the back of every cabaret room. So if we have to open up at diminished capacity because of physical distancing guidelines, let's sell virtual tickets and let's open that up. Maybe the clubs can, and one of our other contributors suggested this, although I don't want to name him yet, suggested maybe the clubs can offer a virtual experience with delivery of food and drink to the people who live in the area who would come to the club. Like, there are ways to come out of this and navigate out of this where actually more people will get to see the show. Where people in other cities and maybe even other countries will get to see your live streaming performance.
Well, on some of, I know most of you saw this Friday night. We did our celebration of Bobby Horowitz and Carol Demas. Happy birthday, Bobby! She's here watching, and happy birthday tomorrow to Carol Demas. But we were originally, I'm not going to use the word supposed, because I am tired of hearing people say, I was supposed to be doing this, I was supposed to be doing that. This is where we are right now. Originally, we were scheduled to be at the Laurie Beachman. And what's the seating capacity at the Laurie Beachman?
I think 80 or 90.
We had, several thousand people to us on Friday night. That we raised a lot of money for American Songbook Association, which I'm proud of.
And thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you all. Yes, and thank you, Sue. So we were seen by a much bigger audience. And a couple of weeks ago, the Stephen Sondheim concert.
Yes.
It crashed the internet because there were so many people trying to get on to see that. I want to ask each of you, because believe it or not, our time is winding down.
Wow.
And if anyone if you have a question, and we can try to squeeze it in before we finish, I want to ask each of you how you feel that cabaret has defined you as an entertainer, as a business person, and as a human being.
Wow.
I'll let you take that, Sue.
You need to answer that one too.
But you can go first.
What's the first one?
How it has defined you as an entertainer.
As an entertainer, I think the best advice I got was from Julie Wilson to learn how to compete with yourself and yourself alone the last time you were on stage, to let all your comparisons go and just focus on the work you do and raising your personal bar a little bit every time you step on stage. So very early on in this, for the first 10 of these 35 years I've been doing this, I was, the green-eyed monster at everybody else's accomplishments and talent. I had to stop that. And you know what? When I stopped that, things started changing for me. That brings a new level of confidence and a new level of belief in yourself. As a businesswoman, I always had the skills, so nothing really changed. Or if anything, it just helped me focus on, how to produce my own shows and how to offer other people. And now I'm helping to produce down at Winter Rhythms at Urban Stages and stuff. And then you said personally,
and how it's as a person. But going back to what you just said, and I'm going to give you time, David, also to respond. And I'm sure that both of you will agree, this is a business, and I think that that's the one aspect of it that people fail. And we could do a whole other show on this. But the business aspect of it, I find, because that I've worked on both sides of the fence, that people will come to me, who are getting ready to do a show, who have not even budgeted having a PR person in place, or all the elements that it takes to put a show together, advertising, and
I'm going to say, much to her credit, Sue is responsible for putting in an entire chapter on the self-production, the budgeting, the whole thing. And the publisher was a little resistant. I don't even know if I told you this, Sue, but the publisher was at first like, do we really?
The figures were so depressing.
do we really need this? I'm like, yes, we really need this.
Nobody's going to want to do this.
You know, you have to understand that when this book was proposed to me to write this, you know, there were chapters that they were proposing we write, like how to audition for cabaret. I'm like, you don't audition for cabaret, you produce cabaret. Right. They didn't know that, you know. And
there was a time where you did audition.
There was a time when you did. That's right. And I wouldn't mind going back to that. Honestly, I wouldn't mind being produced. I wouldn't mind the club actually taking ownership and paying the salary. And, you know, I wouldn't mind that. I think that's a great way to go. But this is the only book in the series that has that type of information in it.
Dawn Rose said we should do a part 2 on the business part of it.
I was going to say, I want to bring the two of you back, if we can do that. Sure. In a few weeks, because the next few weeks are actually booked. We'll pick a date, and I would love to have you come back and let's talk about the business end of the business.
And I think we both do that a little bit about some of the stuff that's going forward for how to perform in this way of performing too. So,
yeah. Next steps for cabaret.
But since we are in the closing moments of this interview, and I thank you both so much.
Thank you, Richard.
I want to let everyone know that on the bottom of the screen, you see the name of the book. So you want to Sing Cabaret, Amazon.com. You want to Sing Cabaret Performers. Just go to Amazon.com and put in the title of the book. This is not the entire link to get you there.
Right.
And because if I put the entire link to get you there, it's a lot of gobbledygook.
Right.
But just remember the title of the book. So you want to Sing Cabaret.
We are also taking pre-orders on Cabaret Hotspot. So you can go right to cabaret-hotspot.com and pre-order the book there. It's not quite out yet because of COVID-19, but we're hoping by the end of June it will be.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask each of you, and then I'm going to announce our winner.
All right.
I have been, keeping tabs, and I've got a reason for our winner today. But I want you to each, in our closing remarks, if there's anything that I did not cover, and I apologize if I didn't, that you really were hoping to get across today, in your closing remarks about today's interview.
Well, I'm fine. You've asked everything I wanted you to ask. You were a great host as always, but I want to hear David's answers to those questions.
Yeah, I do too. We've got time for that.
I want to hear what he has to say.
Okay, what was that? How
you professionally and personally?
Singing cabaret and learning the craft of cabaret. A lot of which I did through writing this book. I have to tell you, I did not know that cabaret was what it was when I first started writing this book. I'll be very honest about that. It has changed me. It has humbled me in a way. There's a lot less ego of I want to sing and I want to perform and I want to get out there. I mean, there is a little bit of that there because we are animals of performance, but the redirection of being in service to the lyric, the redirection of I'm not going to key that. I'm not going to key every song in the money note key. It's not about that. It's not about my ego of singing. It's about what do I want to say with this lyric and what's very different about this lyric. And I've learned that right up until these last few weeks. I did an arrangement with Gregory Teroyan that was something completely different than I thought it was going to turn out to be, and fantastic. And to allow that collaborative process to happen in service to the lyric. So as a performer, it has definitely changed me.
And all for you, all for the audience.
We all do for the audience, right?
Because I want to see how it affects and how it translates and how it communicates to you guys. So it's always the audience that challenges us to do this work. It should be anyway. If it's not, it should be.
Right. And personally, this community of performers, and I mean, now I'm talking nationally, because now I'm in touch with the national community of cabaret performers, is really spectacular. You all are stars on and off the stage. So thank you. And thank you for kind of letting us in and embracing me. Sue's been embraced for years, but embracing me to to be part of this, because it's really quite phenomenal. And thank you, Richard, too.
Thank you,
Richard.
Sue, any closing remarks?
No, just thank you. You're an awesome host, and thank you for having us on and for helping us sell the book. And we'd love to come back and talk about business stuff if that's what your audience wants us to do. We're happy to do that.
Yeah.
So stick around for just a few minutes. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. But before we go, a couple of things that I want to say. On Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, it streams right here on my Facebook page and on YouTube. We are going to be doing a celebration of Bill Berloni. And Bill Berloni is the animal trainer to the Broadway animals on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
He and his wife, Dorothy, have a farm in Connecticut. They have 40 animals that they are training for Broadway and regional productions as of this moment. But of course, with the pandemic, everything is stopped. They have no income coming in. They've got these 40 animals. And if any of you have pets, it takes a lot to feed these animals. They can't find homes for these animals because these animals are being trained specifically for roles that they will be playing later on. So on Friday night, and I've reached out to a lot of surprise guests from the Broadway and theater community who have been involved with shows that Bill Berloni has done. We're going to be raising money for the Theatrical Animals Fund, which is a new fund that just got started. So I hope that you'll all tune in for that, number one. Also, if you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you all did, please go to richardskipper.com. That's my website. And put your thoughts about the show. That helps to book me in other markets. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without doing anything in return. Don't do that. Don't go out. But what you can do is you can go to your Facebook page, and David and Sue, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to go to your Facebook page, and I want you to go to your 7th friend. The number today is 7. Go to your 7th friend that shows up on your list and reach out to them just to say hello. I am checking in to see how you're doing. Will you all promise me that you'll do that? And let me know how it goes. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for casting your lives and Nightlife Exchange. I hope I've covered everything. And next Monday, we will be back here with Jamie DeRoy.
Oh, yay.
Come back, and thank you. Have a great week, everyone. And I'm going to say goodbye. And David and Sue, stick around.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.